Can India and China go to war? And in case they do, what will the outcome be? Because day in and day out, China threatens India with a repeat of 1962. Now, the Indian Military Review, it's a magazine where defense analysts, top generals, admirals and air marshals, they've done a war game scenario. So the current standoff at the Doklam Plateau, is it an isolated incident or is there a wider game plan? What will it lead to? Let's take a look. That's our top focus story. According to this war simulation by the Indian Military Review magazine, 2018 presents an opportune window for China to hit out at India. The perfect time to strike before India completes crucial weapons purchases and is fully war ready. For instance, the first French-made multi-role Rafale fighters are due to arrive in 2019 and the light combat aircraft in 2021. According to the IMR war simulation, the war could begin early next year. This is how the grand build-up to war may actually unfold. In the spring of 2018, the Dragon mounts a massive deception centered in Ladakh with a series of border incursions to distract and provoke the Indian army. With Pakistan launching a series of ceasefire violations along the line of control. Next, the Chinese mount a series of aggressive firepower drills in Tibet to drum up attention. And then begins the steady needling. Border incursions in Barahoti, Uttarakhand, the middle sector. By the end of August 2018, the Border Defense Regiment of China silently mobilizes its huge forces to the border areas of India's northeast, centered around the Chumbi Valley, right next to the site of the current standoff. A terrifying scenario on the threshold of war. The experts visualizing the India-China War 2018 say this is only the beginning of what comes next. Bureau Report, India Today. So how will it pan out sector by sector? Remember, there are three sectors we're predominantly talking about. We're talking about Arunachal Pradesh, we're talking about Sikkim, that's the eastern sector, then Barahoti, the middle sector, and then eastern Ladakh. How will it pan out in different scenarios? Also, what role will Pakistan play? We'll talk about that in greater detail, but let's take a look at how the war will pan out according to this war game. In this imagined war game, China begins the first escalation by mounting a sudden machine gun attack on Indian troops on the Doklam Plateau, killing 20 of them and injuring more than 15. Facing nothing but rhetoric and warmongering for over a year, the Indian forces are stunned by the attack. Now clear that China plans to take it all the way. The 15-month military build-up by China was used as a ruse to intimidate and silence India. But now it's become clear that Beijing means to actually pull the trigger in the biggest way possible, and that is precisely what happens in the war game. A fortnight after the attack, China opens up its true war weapons. For the first time in history, launching tactical ballistic missiles on Indian targets. Chinese missiles with conventional warheads smashed down into the Indian Army's 33 Corps headquarters in Siliguri and the 2 division headquarters in Gangtok and Kalimpong. Another barrage of missiles caused severe damage at India's crucial forward air bases at Tezpur, Chabua and Jalpaiguri. Then comes the ground assault. Indian intelligence units on the border realize that a Chinese Special Forces brigade has been heli-dropped near the Doklam Plateau and is making its way into Indian territory. Packed with troops, Chinese Mi-17 and A-352 choppers bring their army's most formidable ground troops into action. Providing protection to the Chinese forces on ground, Chinese fighter jets fly in, taking the attack several notches higher by bringing in air power. But by now the Indian Air Force already has warbirds in the air, fully anticipating the vicious Chinese escalation. The Chinese jets encounter Indian pilots in Indian airspace in the first major air battle in decades. The far better trained Indian Su-30 pilots managed to shoot down 7 Chinese jets, losing just one of their own. India has managed to fight off China's air attacks, teaching the enemy a bloody and expensive lesson. But the war has only just begun, with Chinese forces managing to align themselves along the crucial Siliguri corridor. A true tank battle begins on ground, with Indian Army tanks and Chinese forces clashing in several parts of the area, including in Sikkim, not far from the Doklam standoff. Having vanquished the Chinese air advance, Indian pilots and their Su-30 fighter jets are then directed to fly straight into Tibet and destroy China's air bases at Lhasa, Bangsa and 2 other bases. Now, hours after hostilities broke out, it's India's turn to open up its formidable tactical weapon. A barrage of BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles are launched to strike deep inside Tibet, destroying Chinese military depots and supply lines, severely damaging Chinese morale and logistics. China simply doesn't realize what's hit them hard. The Chinese army's light tanks that have silently climbed up into the Chumbi Valley, ready to rumble over the border and into India, had hoped for friendly skies and help from the Chinese Air Force. Sadly for the Chinese tank regiments, they received only hell from above on the morning of September 22, 2018. With Indian Sukhois precision bombing at least 40 Chinese tanks, totally decimating the Chinese armored assault. The same night, Indian tanks zero in on the Chinese Special Forces brigade that has reached the Siliguri corridor, catching them entirely by surprise. The brigade is bled badly and survivors chased out to other border positions. Meanwhile, the Indian artillery positions have severely damaged Chinese resupply positions on the border to cut off any backup support. With Indian Su-30s and MiG-21s destroying Chinese bridges across the Brahmaputra, the Chinese war effort stands stalled. A nightmare situation for the attacking Red Army. Things now stand ready for India's final act. Finally, with China on the back foot, severely repulsed but still packing a heavy punch, India deploys a tank regiment to completely cut off the Chumbi Valley itself. A heavy Chinese tank division clashes directly with India's T-90 Bhishma tanks in the area. In a battle so close that it would be dangerous for Indian fighter jets to bomb the Chinese tanks, has been tentatively repulsed, with China underestimating the power of India's defences and counter-offensive impulse. But the war isn't just over yet. Bureau Report, India Today. Two of the finest military minds join me on the broadcast now. With me is Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, Pudding Ahluwalia as he is lovingly called, former Air Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Western Air Command. Sir, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Also with me is Major General Ravi Arora, Editor, India Military Review, the one who's written about this war game. But General, every war has an objective. So what is China's objective, if at all the two countries go to war?
No, this was not pre-planned. Right now the objective was to extend their road, which the Chinese have built through Bhutanese territory, the Doklam Plateau. They wanted to extend it to Gyamuchin. They timed it to do it during Narendra Modi and NSA Ajit Doval's visit to Washington. But at that time it was ignored. But when the army came to know, and Bhutan requested India to help, the Chinese were stopped from doing anything. Now, as far as the objective of the Chinese now goes, again, it is the play of events which have worked on them. There is the National Congress of the Communist Party taking place in November.
No, I appreciate that. But a country with such a strategic thinking as China, Air Marshal Ahluwalia, they're looking at our ground forces. They're also looking at our air force and India's air power. With the Su-30s, with our Mirages, and you've commanded the Mirage Squadron and the base. Will they risk it, or can we stall them should they try something?
Oh, I think it's quite apparent, and it's factual, that today we are in a much, much stronger position than we were during 62, which means that the army is well deployed. It is already at the vantage points. If China wants to come back, the terrain is totally with the Indian side. The ratio of 12 Chinese to 1 Indian offensive versus defensive forces will be required.
But their missiles, their air power.
But you see, missiles will be no use in the mountains because it's all camouflaged. There is no concentration of troops. Whereas in the Tibetan plateau, there will be concentration of troops before they have the offensive launch. Okay. Before they launch offensively. So they will be sitting ducks for air power.
Is that air power superior to theirs? Because numbers are with them.
Much superior. You know, air power is basically technology, precision strike. You know, I must have the capability to be able to attack at my place and time of choosing with precision at maximum range. We have all that in terms of the kind of weapons that we've got, in terms of the radars that we've got, and in terms of our radars that are going to tell us where to look.
Okay.
The only thing that we need to up now is the ISR capability.
Yes.
There's the intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, which will help us to do the targeting right.
Which is perhaps what the government needs to acquire on priority. But remember, Chief of the Army Staff General Bipin Rawat spoke of war on 2.5 fronts. So you have a hostile China. Should China start something foolhardy, you also have a Pakistan that may come and try something at the line of control. And of course, Pakistan's proxies, they're terrorists. So is India geared up for this 2.5 front war? Also, has this been factored in this war game? Let's find out. Engaged on the China front, Pakistan did its hyena act. Pakistan Army intensified shelling all along the 770-kilometer long line of control. Chief of the Army Staff, General Bipin Rawat, had said that the army was prepared for a 2.5 front war. The Indian Army hit back and hard. The artillery duels all along the LOC escalated. But artillery duels were just the beginning. Pakistan Army moved its strike corps, Army Reserve North and Army Reserve South into their launch pads. Pakistan Army claimed India was about to attack Pakistan. That's not all. Pakistan-sponsored terrorists intensified their operations in the depth areas in the Kashmir Valley. The army, the Jammu and Kashmir police and the CRPF were engaged in heavy counter-terrorism operations simultaneously. Even as India hit Pakistan along the line of control, there was an apprehension that the situation could escalate. The Strategic Forces Command was alerted. The United States, meanwhile, warned Pakistan of severe consequences. As a precautionary measure, the US Navy 5th and 7th Fleet moved into the Indian Ocean region. The Indian Navy was dominating the Indian Ocean and had impounded 53 Chinese ships. Chinese submarines were also swarming the waters and sank some Indian merchant vessels. In retaliation is where diplomacy kicked in. Russian President Vladimir Putin intervened. The Russian Foreign Minister flew into Beijing and then New Delhi. The matter was also taken up at the United Nations Security Council. A ceasefire and immediate pullback was ordered. Soon, the guns fell silent. The India-China War 2018 ended in a stalemate. Both India and China suffered heavy losses. According to the IMR War Games, there are no clear victors from this war. Bureau Report, India Today. India does not want war, but if China thrusts it on us, can war be handled or prevented? Can war be prevented?
The day China says we can resolve this through talks, there will be no chance of war. India wants to avoid it.
But China says it's loss of face. Then what?
Yes. There are two things that we have to look at to avoid this kind of confrontation. One is deterrence. We've got to have strong military, which would be a deterrent to any adventure that they might want to have. Number two is diplomatic discussions. So if we can handle it both ways, I think we are not going to war.
Okay. Deterrence and diplomacy. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me on this special broadcast. China should realize one thing: India well prepared. India does not want war, but well prepared to push the aggressor back and handle it on two fronts. But diplomacy and having more weapons as deterrence will help India. Armed forces are an insurance policy and the government needs to pay the premium to get them their weapons and equipment. That is all that I have for you in this India First special. Many thanks for watching.